saw the first 63 split window at the Great Lakes Theater when I was about 15 years old, and I looked at that and I thought, you talk about a beautiful car, that is it. I've learned a lot over the last 40 years of collecting, and I always want the best. I buy the best, and I sell the best. Growing up in Detroit, the first car I ever bought was a 63 split window Corvette right out of high school. I paid $1,900 for it. I didn't know I was collecting a car when I bought the 63 split window, you know, and it was just a car back there. Just a beautiful car, you know. I just love Corvettes, and I always have, and just started collecting them as I grew older. Collecting cars has been one of the best parts of my life.
He is a lifelong Corvette fanatic, and that's apparent in the way that he's gone with his strategy to collecting. The mix of Frank's inventory is sort of split between cars that are restored to a high level and cars that are in highly original condition.
I got the real thing. Everything I have, we've done our due diligence on. I've learned a lot over the last 40 years of collecting, and I always want the best. I buy the best, and I sell the best. I have to have original cars. All the cars I have are original. The engines are the ones that we're born with, and I have to have documentation and history on them.
The car collecting world, maybe the gold standard just in general, is documentation, paperwork. Not only to prove that the car is presented as it was when the car was new, but that it tells a story, literally back to day one. The common theme is the fact that these cars have been subjected to stringent judging, whether it be Bloomington Gold, NCRS, various Concours d'Elegance, whatever. And they've always scored very well.
Just another proof to an investor that this is the real thing. Cars are not just cars. To me, they're investments. They're like Picassos. All my cars are like that. And we treat them like Picassos.
His staff will go in and look for things that the average, even the average expert, probably is not going to notice. All with the thought that he wants these cars to be presented as perfectly as possible, as much as they would have been when they left the factory and when they got to the dealership. And he just doesn't compromise with that. And that means a lot, especially to collectors in the Corvette world.
Every nut and bolt is off, and everyone is perfected with OEM parts, and that's what my cars are made of.
Out of an exceptional group of Corvettes, this 1958 really stands alone. And Frank's particular example is restored to such a high standard, it literally takes your breath away when you look at it.
Affectionately called the Roach. And Tim Mickey found it, and it was a barn find. And I got pictures of the engine numbers and the heads and all that before they tore it down. Proof that it is a real charcoal, red interior, fuel-injected car.
And one of the most unusual engine options, the 250 horsepower, fuel-injected 283, that's the hydraulic cam Fuelie with a 4-speed. Only around 900 of those cars with that engine were built, and they're rarely seen today. So if you combine condition, color combination, and quality of restoration, maybe one of the best 58 Corvettes in the world. While we know that the 1967 Corvette in itself is a sensation, it was the final year for the C2 Corvette, this particular Corvette's very, very special. Not just because it got the optional 390 horsepower 427 and a 4-speed, but because of the condition and the quality of the restoration is about as good as it gets. The only thing really that needs to be mentioned as is something a bit unusual in the Corvette world is the fact it's been subjected to a color change.
The car was painted in 1998. It's originally a yellow car, painted black by the original owner.
And even with that, this car has scored a very high number in the world of NCRS, which is very picky about how they award points.
97.6. That includes a 2-point deduction for a color change.
Bottom line, the fact that this car has scored so high means it's going to be a hit with collectors. Original cars, original paint continue to be at the top of serious collectors' wish list. Corvette buyers, collectors, enthusiasts have become enamored and fascinated with originality. The Lindell Blue 427, 435 Coupe with its original paint is a literal time machine.
Everything is, except for the tires, the hoses, the belts, the plugs, the battery, everything's not been touched on that car.
It's going to go down in history as a really good example, as a Bloomington Gold benchmark car, as a judging standard for Corvettes in the future. That's how important this car is. Another rarity, another high-profile car in the C2 Corvette world would be any Corvette with air conditioning.
The 67 triple black Roadster, factory air, that car is absolute jewelry.
The L79 is a legendary small block, 327 cubic inches, but it was rated 350 horsepower. Back that up with a restoration that presents itself literally as new, and all the show awards to go with it. Once again, you are looking at a Corvette of the highest level that enthusiasts are going to flock to. Big news, 1968, the Shark Corvette was revealed. I would expect Frank to have one of the best, and he does.
That's a very, very rare car. I don't know how many they made on there, but I bought that at the Trewergy Muscle Car Museum. Trewergy had it on his museum floor for probably 20 years. Never started it, nothing, just sat there. It's a real black-red 427 L89 CCAS affirmation by Al Grenning.
They're important because it was the beginning of the C3 run, which ran all the way from 68 to 1982, 15 years of this body style, and it all started with this car. Motorcycles are a fairly common part of automobile collecting. They do go sort of hand in hand.
I've got kind of a love of motorcycles. That's why I got some Indians and Harleys.
They were very carefully picked, not only for the condition, but also for the significance to that time period and how all these motorcycles today are sought after by collectors. Indian in the 1920s made a fantastic motorcycle, a mid-sized motorcycle that was reliable, it was fast, it was easy to handle. It was called the Scout.
23 Indian Scout is 100 years old now.
But even on top of that is the incredible originality. And just like car collectors, vintage motorcycle collectors love originality as well.
It's just patina. It's just a beautiful piece of work.
Since 1903, Harley-Davidson has built some of the finest American motorcycles, and Frank's trio of Harley-Davidsons really represent some really great eras. Post-World War II era with the 1946 WL that is restored to perfection.
That motorcycle is all original steel, original motor, numbers matching.
750cc air-cooled V-twin with a hand-shifted 3-speed. It literally looks like jewelry. Backing that up is the first-year Sportster, 1957, where everything changed for Harley-Davidson. It was a modern design, 883 cc's, but it was an overhead valve engine, unitized transmission. It's a 4-speed. The bike was light, that bike was fast, that bike had an image and a look right off the bat. And here we are over 65 years later, going into 2024, and Harley-Davidson has announced the end of the Harley-Davidson Sportster line. That's only going to make these vintage bikes, especially from the first year, even more valuable and sought after. We know that the 1960s was a decade for evolution in the motorcycle world. By the influx of Japanese motorcycles, Harley-Davidson in the 1960s really didn't have much to compete with. So what they did is they outsourced. They went to Airmach in Italy. And the first year of a legendary motorcycle called the Sprint 350cc, it's a big thumper. It's an air-cooled single, 1-cylinder. It gave Harley-Davidson a worthy entry into that mid-sized motorcycle market that they just didn't have before. Muscle cars came into their own in the 1960s. Muscle motorcycles also kind of came of age during that same time period. And the Norton British-built Commando 750 is one of those motorcycles.
Back in the 70s, if you had a Norton, you were king of the hill.
The styling, the potent 750cc engine, even the design of the suspension and the rubber-mounted engine, all were innovative for the time period. How great is Frank's? It's one of the finest restorations I've ever seen. Perhaps the most legendary British motorcycle manufacturer of all time was Triumph. Triumph Bonneville was considered to be the bike to have. So what has Frank chosen? A 1970 Bonneville, 650cc, vertical twin, they're 4-speed transmissions. The look of this motorcycle, due to the high-end restoration, is unsurpassed. once again, his strategy and the theme continues, and that is having the best of the best, one of the best Triumph Bonnevilles in the world.
Why am I selling? I've been buying and keeping for 25, 30 years. It's really part of the collector car business that I love, and as a collector, I've never experienced the selling part. We like going to Mecum, and this is going to be a new experience for me.
Frank Berris truly has the best of the best Corvettes and motorcycles.